You're watching Beyond Markets, where we bring you up to speed on development outcomes across Africa. I am Christy Cole. Welcome to the show. Today, our focus is on the 60th Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association, themed Step Forward. The event, which was held mostly virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic, featured former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, Nigeria's Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, among other respected legal and economic minds across Africa and the globe. Join the discussion. Let's get your thoughts on social media. The hashtag to use is Beyond Markets. You can send me a message on Twitter as well. My handle is @ChristyColeP. The Nigerian Bar Association has just concluded its annual general conference and AGM. A couple of things signpost this year's event. First, it is the bar's 60th anniversary, just a month ahead of Nigeria's independence anniversary. And secondly, the event had to be held mostly virtually due to the COVID-19 restrictions. A senior advocate of Nigeria and chairman of the Technical Committee on Conference Planning of the NBA Conference, Konyi Ajayi, joined CNBC Africa's Kenneth Igbomo earlier to discuss the sessions explored and the purpose of the week-long conference.
What this 60-year means is that we're in an age where Black lives matter, an age where we have to step forward to help to shape the future of work. We have to step forward to look at the work of the future. We have to look forward to the new currency, which no longer is atoms but bits. It's about data. It's about the digital world. We have to look at a world where fossil fuels will no longer be the currency. We're looking at 60 years of exemplary contribution to the building of this nation. We're looking at 60 years of tackling military rule, oppression and wickedness in all its forms. We're looking at 60 years of a contribution to nation building, to the economic development of the country, to our outsourcing of the best brilliant minds to different parts of the world. 60 years when judgments of Nigerian courts were relied upon all over the Commonwealth, in Australia, in England, in Hong Kong, and all over Africa. So that's what we're looking at, our 60 years of what we've done. And indeed, our mistakes in the last 60 years, our errors and our failures. We'll look at these things, examining them to see how our today can be a lot better than our yesterday. But guess what? What's more important is this. In 60 years' time, when we'll celebrate our next 60 years, Nigeria will be the 4th largest country in the world. So we're gathered here to look at those things that we can do to make sure that we're not big for nothing, but that we're big for something. To make sure that in 60 years' time, Nigeria will be one of the 3rd largest economies in the world. Nigeria will be one of the best developed countries in the world, anchored on the rule of law, anchored on justice. This is a discussion. This is not just storytelling, but a discussion as to how we can come together, united in our diversity, building on the strength of that, looking at how faith can unite us, propel us to greater heights, looking at how we can build on the bomb, which Albert Einstein says is the best bomb that any human being can build, the bomb that destroys enemy of mankind, the bomb that destroys hatred, the bomb that destroys division, the bomb that destroys inequality and poverty that we see in our land. And what is that bond? What is this bond? The bond, Albert Einstein says, is love. And what is this? It's about human relations. The Nigerian Bar Association stands to look at the agency by which the world moves. And that agency is us, human beings. And we human beings do not operate outside society, and society is meaningless without the rule of law. So this is what this is about, and we hope that over these 2 days, the conversations will be such that helps us to propel us to better peace, to better progress, to greater unity, and to those things that would enable us in the good pursuit of the goodness that brings happiness to mankind.
All right, definitely quite a lot. Over the years, we've seen the NBA Annual General Conference, tackle some very topical and pertinent issues on the continent. What can we expect from this year's conference?
Right. Okay. So this year, interesting things. Very soon we'll have a keynote address by none other than one of the greatest speakers in the world today, Ibukwan Woshika, chairperson of First Bank. Immediately after him will be a conversation with Tony Blair, who will be talking about the world's response to COVID and those things which we need to do to build lasting institutions in our society. He himself being a lawyer, he'll tackle the question of rule of law and the standards that are developed in different parts of the world to looking at one of the greatest problems we have, which is corruption. And then we segue immediately thereafter into executive orders and the rule of law. As you know, our president has issued a number of executive orders, and there are questions around the utility of this. We realize that a better part of the Nigerian population today is our youth. 60% of us are youth. So there's going to be a great session on Youth Step Forward. Now, we're not talking about stepping forward into infamy and some of those things that you see on social media, but we're looking at how the youth can actually take reign of control in the NBA, how they can take reign of control in our judicial system, how they can take control in our political and judicial affairs. That's what we're looking at. And we're hoping that in doing this, we'll also be looking at Made in Niger, Use in Niger, Proud about Niger. So we have a session also on this great debate about gender equality. We look at no means no. We look at the gender gap. We will look at the virtual age. We're going to have one of the most senior judges in Scotland, who happened to be my people master when I was training in the UK, will be speaking to us. Would have sessions also on those aspects that go to the coat of arms of Nigeria: faith, unity, progress, and order. So there's this session which has in itself created a lot of controversy, which we hope will allow us to interrogate the question of what it is to be a Nigerian. Is Nigeria a geographical expression or a people bound by love, peace, and unity? And we hope that that conversation will help us to answer some of these questions. Why would the governor of Cross River State not appoint as chief judge somebody who lived, is married to Cross River State, lived in Cross River State all her life, worked in the ministry and judiciary, and now should be CJ, but he's refused and says she's on Akwa Ibom and therefore that's a security risk. Don't forget that Cross River and Akwa Ibom State were one, used to be Cross River State. And then you have someone like Yemi Wike, who appoints someone who's not an indigenous of the state as chief judge of the state. We hope we'll interrogate questions like what the vice president said. In making an appointment, is federal character meaningless, or is it to help us, making sure that a diversity is brought into strength, bearing in mind that we must only look at merit in the things that we do. We look at questions as to whether you're a Nigerian because you're a Muslim or you're a Christian, whether you're a Shiite or whether you're a Sunni, whether you're from the north or the middle belt or south-south or southeast. Is that what matters? Is it your class that matters? What brings us together? Is it commonality as to poverty, commonality as to suffering under corruption, commonality as to suffering under the weight of illiteracy and mediocrity? These are questions that we'll interrogate in this conference, and we hope that, at the end of it all, we come up with solutions that will allow us to step forward.
Definitely quite a lot to look for and expect at the conference this year, listening to the conversation that you're putting forward there, a lot when it comes to what it means to being a Nigerian. But as the chairman, though, of the Technical Committee put this whole conference together. I'd like you to speak to the peculiarities of having this virtual meeting, especially adapting to the new normal that COVID-19 presents.
All right, yes, I think that's a very interesting question. And one of the things that pandemics do is either to kill our spirit or to bring out the best in us. So I was listening to an expert just a few days ago, and he says that there's a success factor in our brain that needs to be released. It's a valve that allows us to thrive and to perform. And what COVID-19 has done is to allow the NBA to thrive and perform. Hitherto, our conferences was growing from like 1,000 to 2 to 5, then it jumped to 10, and then to dipped to 9, then came to 12, and here we are today, as I speak, over 22,000. So typically our conferences cost a lot of money. People have to travel, be accommodated, and so on and so forth. Now here we have this conference. No delegate having to pay a penny in the first place. Secondly, we're in an environment where WFH, work from home, is very important. So it means that most people can, in the comfort of their office or the comfort of their homes, enjoy 108 absolutely brilliant speakers, teach, exchange ideas, and bring light into the darkness that is around us. The conference also, being virtual, has allowed us to save the NBA a lot of money. It's allowed us to have great interaction and is beginning to assist the bar and the bench in the quest to ensure that virtual hearings, virtual trials, virtual judicial proceedings come to reality. As the President mentioned in his speech to us, it takes so long to get out of the courts in Nigeria. It's very easy to get into the courts. It's very difficult to get out of the courts. When this happens, we're sure that we're going to have a lot happening in the judicial system. We're going to find out that the legal system will produce better justice, quicker justice, cheaper justice.
That was Senior Advocate of Nigeria and Chairman of the Technical Committee on Conference Planning of the NBA, Konyi Ajayi. Nigeria's Vice President and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, spoke on the state of the nation.
Thank you very much, Nduka. Thank you, and thank you very much also to the Bar Association, especially the leadership, for this honor of speaking to us all on the state of the nation. Regarding whether or not we have succeeded, I think it's too early, it's early days, to say whether we've succeeded in turning the pandemic into an opportunity. But I must say that the pandemic itself presents an opportunity. And we, as a government, have seen it as such, as an opportunity to do so many different things. First of all, even just in scaling up our medical response and our capacity to be able to respond to pandemics now in the future. As you know, we used to have 4 molecular laboratories. Now we have 64 molecular laboratories. We have now capacity for far more ICU beds. We have, I think, now something in the order of over 300 ICU beds and over several now, just in terms of other beds, bed space and hospital capacity. That is also considerably high today. But we've also, in terms of just improving capacity and improving our ability to respond, just on the medical side alone, you will see that, at a point, we were worried about just the capacity to provide oxygen. Now we have several facilities for oxygen, even oxygen production has in Nigeria means that today we are able to do much more, even with our capacities in the hospitals. We now have about, just bed capacity alone, 7,190 beds. We have about 20,000 health workers that have been trained on infection and control. We have over 4,000 now oxygen delivery equipment and accessories nationwide, and we've also been able to provide about a minimum of about ₦1 billion to each state just to improve their capacity. Lagos State alone had about 10 billion. So just in terms of improving medical capacity, a lot has happened. But then that's on the medical or the healthcare side. On the economic side, obviously, you've spoken about the economic sustainability plan, and this has provided, again, yet another opportunity of addressing some of the serious concerns that we have on the economy. I think for us as a government, one of the key worries that we had was more for how this would affect jobs and job production and job sustenance. And I think that what we saw was a problem, a very big problem with the informal workers, and persons who have to work day to day for their survival. And what we tended to see there was that people like, just to take an example, tailors, artisans, caterers, event planners, decorators, makeup artists, hairdressers, barbers, tailors even for ashrebi, printers, souvenir dealers, people like that, obviously were in trouble. And we needed to address the concerns that they had, because these people rely on an ecosystem that had collapsed with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's aside from big industries such as hospitality. Of course, occupancy rates in hotels fell, in some big hotels below 10%. Even hospitals, even private hospitals, experienced problems because people avoided private hospitals, same as aviation. And of course, we know all the problems associated with that. So we're concerned with saving those jobs, which is why we put in place what we've described as a survival fund, which will cater for artisans, 42,000 per state for a start, across the states. And that will be in the form of support for artisans. We also have a payroll support scheme, which will support persons, especially in private school teachers, for example, and then small businesses who employ up to and not more than about 50 persons. We also have some kind of support for them. At the moment, we're in the process, of compiling that data, and the criteria has been set already. That committee is headed by the Honorable Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, and the Vice Chair is Mrs. Ibukunwa-Woshika, the chairperson of First Bank. So they are basically looking at the criteria for giving out this payroll support, and also for several of the other support schemes that we have. So by and large, we're tackling those issues. Of course, we're also looking at the bigger issues. How do we support aviation? How do we support the hospitality industry? And these are big areas where we're looking at support. Now, in the first place, you're probably aware that the CBN has already put in place several mechanisms for ensuring that loans that have been taken by companies and by some of these big enterprises in the sectors that I've just mentioned, that there is some succor for them in the form of restructuring of their loans, lower interest in some cases, in some moratorium is granted, and all of that. I'm just picking the headlines of some of these efforts. And of course, the Bank of Industry has also had to reduce interest rates in many cases and restructure facilities. So there is a wide range of issues. I'm sure we'll get to talk about them in some detail later on. But this is just to give you a broad, if you like, a broad framework of the kinds of efforts that are going on. And this is, of course, so I think I'll just hold on here.
That was Nigeria's Vice President and Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, speaking on the state of the nation at the 60th Annual Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. We'll continue the conversation right after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. You're watching Beyond Markets. If you're just joining us, we have been looking at conversations from the just concluded Annual General Conference of the Nigerian Bar Association. One of the high points of the conference was a special guest conversation with a former UK Prime Minister, Tony Blair, where he, among other things, spoke to how Nigeria can migrate into a developed nation through effective leadership.
The challenge of government is essentially delivery. You can work out very easily what government should do to be successful. And if you look at what marks out successful countries in the world, it's not a great mystery. You know, you can look around the world and see what are the elements that go to make up successful countries. The hard part is doing it, because what happens is there are all sorts of interests and obstacles and problems of development that stand in the way of doing it. But if you ask, what does a nation have to do to be successful today? I think there are three prerequisites. First of all, you've got to have a rules-based economy, which means things like the rule of law, predictable environments for investment, the opportunity for businesses to grow and grow fast. So there's got to be a climate for enterprise and business that is rewarding hard work, helping companies grow, and where the infrastructure that's built in a country goes to support that. So all your electricity and your roads and your rail and your airports and so on. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, in today's world particularly, where technology is mobile and capital is mobile, the key is in the human capital of the people, right? That is your big potential stock of value for your country. And if you want to develop that, education is obviously critical, but it's got to be education that teaches people to think creatively, and it rewards those who I call are the open-minded. In other words, people who are open to new ideas, new people. They can go across boundaries of race and faith and culture with ease because they lack prejudice. So the second aspect, along with rule-based economy, second aspect is you need religiously tolerant societies. Because if people are closed-minded towards those that are different, in today's world, you're never going to succeed. And the third thing you need to do is to build the institutions of the state that support all of those things.
Absolutely.
So those are the lessons of what works is a really not hard to discover if you approach it with an open mind. Doing it, however, and doing it in the context of Nigeria, obviously, is a massive challenge. But you know, just as you will know better than me, Mo, unless Nigeria succeeds, Africa won't succeed.
Yes, it's very important that Nigeria succeeds for Africa to succeed. And as you've said, it's all in the doing. But I have three questions that's going to talk about bridging the divide. And you know, I know we could probably spend all day on any of these questions, but if you can just sort of touch on your response in terms of what you happen to think the solutions could be. Now, what are your suggestions on how we can move from a third world nation to a developed country, looking for prescriptions for economic growth, our workforce, migration issues, healthcare, education, and wealth disparity? Now, as I said, I know that we could probably spend all day just talking about this and more, but if you could just sort of just give us a few tips and some guidelines on how we can move from being a third world nation in sort of looking at those areas that I mentioned, economic growth, workforce migration issues, healthcare, education, and wealth disparity.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, without just going back over the 3 points I made, I think if you pick out some of those elements, look, you've got to have the infrastructure that the country needs. So you've got to have a proper power generation sector. You've got to be able to, you know, have the means of bringing goods in and out of your country successfully. So you've got to have that connectivity, and you've got to have it to the outside world, and you've got to have it inside the country as well. I mean, all of that is very obvious. I think the rule of law, it's one of the reasons why, you know, organizations like the Nigerian Bar Association are so important. I mean, the rule of law is absolutely vital. If you look at countries around the world, you will find many examples of countries that go from being third world to second world. You will find very few examples of countries in the last half century that have gone from third world to first world. But any of them who have gone on that journey have got the rule of law. They're not necessarily got democratic systems, you know, in the Western sense, but they've always got the rule of law. Why? Because you can't build businesses if it depends on who you know, or it depends on who's in power as to whether you're allowed to do things or not do things. You can't build a successful, building a business, but you know, it takes you what, 15, 20 years sometimes, right? So you can't do that unless you're in a predictable, rule-based environment. And the other thing I think that's really, really important is education. So here's another thing that I think is worth touching on. One of the things my institute, it works on equipping leaders to make the changes necessary. As you may know, we're in roughly 15 countries in Africa, including parts of the Nigerian system. We're in countries outside of Africa as well. And one of the things that we focus on is, you know, my view, the big event happening globally today that should define politics but doesn't yet define politics is the technology revolution. This is the thing that is going to change everything, and it offers the developing world a massive opportunity, because if you can access the technology and harness it properly in areas like healthcare and education, in time, transport, even law and order, you can transform the way your public institutions work, and you can hugely accelerate your economic development.
Tony Blair, former UK Prime Minister, speaking at the just concluded annual General Conference and AGM of the Nigerian Bar Association. And that's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you for watching. Remember, you can catch the show at 5 p.m. West African time daily and have access to all previous episodes of Beyond Markets on our website, CNBCAfrica.com. Stay engaged with the hashtag Beyond Markets and follow me at Christy Cole P. Do have a great day.